The worst fidget toys for when you're on an airplane. I do not recommend splat balls. Since you're so close to the seat in front of you, you can't really throw it with enough force to get a really good splat. It's not even satisfying. Jumbo pop tubes are extra large and extra loud. If you connect and extend a few, then you kind of go into other people's space. They're also a fidget toy that makes noise when you pull them apart and put them back together. Nothing creepy crawly. Sometimes I can't decide if this face is cute or creepy, but regardless, I think other customers on the plane might be a little shocked if they turned around and saw this on their seats. The worst fidget toys for when you're skiing. I do not recommend acupressure rings because you won't be able to feel them through your glove. And if you drop it, it will be so hard to find. Pop tubes are so much fun and I love the sound they make. But if you extend them really long, you might accidentally ski over top of them. And when you're skiing downhill, they might blow in the wind and accidentally hit another skier. I also do not recommend kinetic sand. Since it can break into tiny pieces, it will probably fall while you're skiing. And then you won't have any left. Oops. Any jumbo pop-it would be hard to use while you're on skis, and you might drop it. Although, you could use your pulls to pop the bubbles.
That's funny.
The worst fidgets for when you're taking a bath. I do not recommend globbies. When you throw them to the ceiling, they'll splatter water everywhere. You might think noodles are a good idea, but you're gonna get water everywhere and they might accidentally fly out of your hands since they're so slippery. So many fidgets to clean up. I do not recommend foam squishies. The type of material will suck in all the water, and I think they're gonna get really gross and moldy when they dry. I can just imagine what's gonna grow in this moist environment. Kinetic sand is really fun to play with, but it makes a huge mess when it touches water. It separates into tiny little pieces, so it's hard to pick back up. Update, I had more to show, but now I just have to clean up the kinetic sand. The worst fidgets for when you're on an airplane. I would not recommend a giant pop-it. It won't fit on your own tray table, and the passenger beside you might not want to share. And the person in front of you might get annoyed if you put it on the seat. Giant pop tubes are also so big they don't really fit into your space. And they're just so loud that other passengers might be annoyed. This big stress ball might work. Personally, I really like watching it bounce in slow motion, but they are a little bit weird when they're squished. These giant snakes are so big it might be hard to create something while staying within your own personal space, but I noticed that the passenger beside me wasn't using all of his tray table, so I helped myself to a little bit of it. If you're playing with this Spider Orbeez ball and the passenger turned around not expecting it, you might scare them. The worst fidget toys for when you're at a sporting event. So I learned this the hard way. You have to make sure not to let go of your stretchy noodles and hit the person beside you. You can use them to cheer for your team though, so that's fun. I don't recommend any jumbo size pop-its. Because the seats are so close, it kind of spills over into other people's personal space. Now, the banana is good because you don't have to worry about hurting anyone else or going in their personal space, but I've noticed I get really strange looks. I don't recommend pop tubes because when you stretch them out, you might hit the person beside you or in front of you. Because sporting events don't have very much space, you shouldn't bring anything really big, although they are really fun to celebrate with. The worst fidgets to bring on an airplane. Would you want someone to be throwing globbles at the back of your seat the entire flight? I think this repetitive loud noise would be annoying for other passengers. Same for these pop tubes, they're super loud. Both when you're pulling it apart and putting it back together. The other passengers probably hated me. Oops. Look how fun this is. I saved the best for last. I wonder if the other passengers thought I was just farting the entire trip. Embarrassing. The worst fidget toys for when you're at the pool. I would not recommend using any kind of foam squishy in the water. It'll retain the water and mess up the foam and even crack. Another thing I would not recommend is kinetic sand. It totally changes the consistency when you get it wet. I don't like how it feels at all. floats all in the water, it's hard to gather up, and is impossible to clean off your hands. I also do not recommend play foam. It's really light and will float away and get lost in the pool really easily. Actually, it really doesn't change the consistency and it's probably fine to go in the pool. But definitely heed my warning about kinetic sand. It made such a big mess. The worst fidgets to bring to the airport. I do not recommend these stretchy spaghetti noodles. If you hit the person sitting next to you, they'll be really annoyed and probably call security. I also do not recommend globbies, especially if they're new and super sticky. If they don't fall from the ceiling, I think the airport will be annoyed to have them stuck there. Pop tubes are too loud to bring to an airport, plus it's too tempting to try and hit the people walking in front of you. Although, one good thing is they stretch really tall and you might be able to use them to get those globbies off the ceiling. The worst fidget toys for when you're on a long car trip and everyone else is sleeping. I do not recommend a popper game. As the name would suggest, it makes a popping sound, and that can be kind of annoying to people who are trying to sleep. I also don't recommend monkey noodles. It's very tempting to use them to hit other people. So unless you can control that urge, probably should not use them. I also don't recommend pop tubes. The other people especially hated this one. Not only does it make a variety of sounds, but because it stretches so long, you can actually use it to hit other people in the car too, which is so fun, it's hard not to do. And when they yell at you to put it away, it's still really loud when you're putting it back together. So that's a no. The worst fidgets for when you're on an airplane. I do not recommend slime because it can get sticky and stringy. If you drop it on the floor, it also gets super dirty and is hard to clean. If you bring this putty, everyone will look at you like super weird. If you bounce the puffer ball into the seat in front of you, they get like super annoyed for some reason. And if you play with this banana, everyone is like grossed out because they think it's real. And this monster is super fun to stretch. But I barely touched this guy and he got so annoyed. The worst fidget toys for when you're at the movie theater. I do not recommend stretchy puffer balls. The LED light in a dark theater could be really distracting. And they are bouncy, but that made this kid really mad at me. These stretchy bananas are so realistic looking that they might try to confiscate it from you before you enter, thinking that you brought in food. And that might be a little bit embarrassing. I don't recommend poppets because they make noise. If you think you'll miss your poppet while you're at the movie, just bring your mini shoe-charm poppet instead. These dimple poppets have an amazing, super satisfying pop. I love snapping them together and apart. Unfortunately, a public movie theater probably isn't the best place to enjoy them, since it may bother the people around you. The worst fidget toys for when you're taking a shower. I do not recommend globbles. They're sticky and collect hair, which is kind of gross. Also, they're made to be thrown, which is fun, but you might hit things when you're throwing them and possibly break them. Smushums are amazing, but if you bring them in the shower and they get wet or shampoo, then their face will peel off, which is sad. You might think noodles are a good idea, but there's just not much room in the shower. And if you're swinging them around, you might hit the glass door. And glass can be fragile at times, so I just really don't want it to break. Kinetic sand is so satisfying, but it changes consistency in the water, and the new consistency is really difficult to clean up. I found the only thing to do is like smush it down the drain. So personally, I just wouldn't bring kinetic sand into the shower. When you go through airport security, they will flag and throw away any items that are super liquidy. They will take it out of your carry-on and throw it away. This surprised me a lot though. On my last airport visit, they took out a sand stress ball and didn't let it pass. So any items like these, don't take. But I have never had any trouble with these type of fidgets. They always let my water bead stress balls go through. This dough ball has like a cloud dough consistency, no problem. And they also haven't said anything about my color change balls. So if you need fidgets, bring these type on the left, not these. The worst fidget toys for when you're going to the bathroom. I do not recommend an acupressure ring. It's very small, they pop off easily, and they're hard to retrieve if they fall in the toilet. While these stress balls are satisfying and fun, I do not recommend it. It is ironic that this is like a pooping one, and the humor might help you relax so that you can do your business better, but the fact that they're cloth means it will be very difficult to sanitize. Some of them also have sound effects, and you probably don't want anyone to think that is you. Since you need 2 hands to adequately squeeze these big mesh balls, I do not recommend, since you should always keep one hand free to wipe. I don't think any kind of puzzle pop-it toy would be good while you're using the restroom. Personally, my lap is just not big enough to hold all the pieces as I problem solve through it, and sometimes the pieces fall, which isn't sanitary. The worst fidget toys for when you're at the gym. I do not recommend any kind of stress ball. When you put them on the floor, it's really easy to smush them with your weights, and they also pick up a lot of dirt. Speaking of picking up dirt, even though the Shimmer Bear is so adorable, it's a little bit sticky and also picks up a lot of dirt. So I don't recommend anything sticky. I do not recommend this Game Boy Pop-It. I was using it during my rest period. Someone who wanted on the machine thought I was playing the game instead of working out. This banana is so good for relieving stress, but not good for the gym. Everyone was looking at me so strange. Pop tubes are good for the treadmill, and I love connecting the pieces, but be careful if you make it too long not to hit the person beside you.